The Bengals traded for Joe Flacco on Tuesday with hopes of saving their season. Did they get it right? Or should they have went after Jameis Winston, Russell Wilson, or one of these other quarterbacks that could have been available? It's time to answer that question right now on Cincinnati Bengals Talk. This show is brought to you by, two lovely sponsors today. Christian Husky of Sipsy Klein Realtors and also our friends at American Home Tech. More from both of them coming up in just a bit, but let's dive into the news of the week. And the Bengals are hoping the news of the next few months. Joe Flacco is a Bengal. Joe Flacco practiced with the Bengals on Wednesday. Joe Flacco will start on Sunday in Green Bay. And look, I was the Russell Wilson person. I talked about Russell Wilson because if you acquired him this week, well, he was owed $1.4 million. And if he hit his incentives, he hit his incentives. You'd love that, right? Jameis Winston was very popular. We've seen reports now that the Bengals kicked the tires on Sam Howell and Drew Lock. Those are two names they discussed internally. I mentioned Drew Lock earlier this week. I did not mention Sam Howell for one reason. It wouldn't be an upgrade. Why trade for Sam Howell? What would that do? And so when I was looking at the backups, he's the third stringer in Washington. I was like, that doesn't really make sense. So I'm glad they didn't do that. And that's why I'm here to tell you they made the right move. They made the right move. I don't know if it's going to work with Joe Flacco, but I would prefer for this team in this offense right now in this moment, Joe Flacco over Russell Wilson, Joe Flacco over Jameis Winston, Joe Flacco over Sam Howell, Drew Lock, Joe Flacco over insert whoever they could have realistically gotten. Andy Dalton. Joe Flacco over Andy Dalton. There's another one. James, what are you talking about? Why would you do that? Why would you prefer Joe Flacco, 40 years old, can't move behind this offensive line? Behind this? Stop being a homer. No, it's not about being a homer. It's about using logic. And once you peel back the layers, you understand why the Bengals went after Joe Flacco and why this was the right move. Will it work? I don't know. But it was the right move in the moment. Why? Well, Zac Taylor said it on Wednesday. Because Joe Flacco can pass the ball.
Why specifically were you just looking at this and saying, hey, we need to add Joe to the mix here?
He's a great passer. And again, we've got to expand all areas of our offense to be better, to be able to efficient, run the football, protect, all that kind of stuff. But the number one trait you're looking for is a guy that can operate your system and throw the football. And Joe's always been a tremendous passer in this league and have seen it. And so now we got tremendous weapons that he can play around. And so I'm excited to watch him do it.
That's the number one thing for a quarterback. That's the number one thing when you have Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and Andre Yosevich and Noah Fant and Mike Gesicki is you pass the football. The Bengals want to pass the rock. And there's going to be so many people that say, oh, yeah, good luck, James. Do it with this offensive line. Jake Browning should have been able to pass the rock the past couple of weeks. Against the Broncos, he didn't turn it over. And Jake Browning, we posted the video and the audio, if you missed it, upset about being benched, and I don't blame him. But he mentioned the Broncos game. I thought the Broncos game was his worst game. I thought that was worse than the Lions game, worse than the Vikings game, worse than the Jags game where he threw 3 picks. Like, worse than all of these games where he threw interceptions and turned the ball over because there were plays out there that he just left out there. They were just sitting out there. They're sitting at mile high right now. And that can't happen. You got to make the plays that are on the field. And so when I think about this offense, when I think about what they have in Jamar Chase and T. Higgins and all of these other weapons, Chase Brown, I haven't mentioned yet. Well, how do you maximize those guys? You get a guy that's going to sling it. You get a guy that trusts his arm. You get a guy that has elite arm strength. And that's why when I look at these other options, it made too much sense. Andy Dalton, not an elite arm, just an okay arm. Joe Flacco still has an elite arm. Neither one moves great. Does Andy move a little better? Sure. Russell Wilson, good arm, moonball Russ. Joe Flacco's arm is much more spectacular than Russell Wilson's. Jameis Winston, everybody loves Jameis. The thing I love about that the Jameis Winston discussion and dialogue has taught me is how important it is to be likable. If you're likable, it gets you a long way. Like, people just really want to be around you. And Jameis Winston is the answer. How many people said, Jameis? Joe Flacco is better than Jameis Winston. Joe Flacco is better than Jameis Winston. And I say that, and people are going to be like, what are you talking about, James? What are you talking about? Well, in 2023, what did Joe Flacco do in Cleveland? All right, let's completed 60% of his passes through 13 touchdowns, 8 interceptions, was 4-1 as a starter, 1 comeback player of the year. 13-8. Last year, same offense. Swap out Jerry Jeudy for Amari Cooper, and Amari Cooper completely washed, by the way, at the time. And Flacco got a ton out of him. Well, Jameis completed 61% of his passes through 13 touchdowns and 12 picks, and went 2-5 as a starter. My point is like, the likability factor matters. Arm talent wise, I think Joe Flacco has the best arm out of any of these guys. And there's a big difference between what the Bengals did to get Joe Flacco and what they would have probably had to do to get Jameis Winston or get Russell Wilson or get an Andy Dalton. And so let's get to that part of this as well, because it is a big factor. We'll do that coming up next. Today's video is brought to you by Christian Husky of Sipsey Klein Realtors. Christian is a giant Bengals fan and, well, let's be honest, Houday faithful. If you're like him, you're cautiously optimistic about Joe Flacco. But if you want to be optimistic about whatever real estate needs you have, well, you got to get with Christian. Check him out, sipseycline.com/chusky. And it is very simple. Whether you're downsizing, whether you're looking for your forever home, maybe you're just looking for some real estate advice, Christian is the guy to turn to. sipseycline.com/chusky. American Home Tech has you covered, Cincinnati. From roofing, siding, to gutters, windows, doors, decks, and full interior remodeling, they do it all. As your local experts, they offer free inspections to help you get started with confidence. Join the thousands of Cincinnati homeowners who trust American Home Tech and schedule your free inspection today at AmericanHomeTech.com. All right, the other factor here when it comes to these quarterbacks and when it comes to Joe Flacco versus these other guys, well, there's a couple factors. One, the leadership element of this. I think the Bengals thought Russell Wilson was so cringe that they were just out on him. And I know a lot of fans felt that way too. Get it. I think physically, does he move a little better than most of these other guys? He does. But you're going to need a real leader here. You're going to need someone that can step up and lead and be able to weather this storm, because it is a storm. It's a whirlwind to get traded for on a Tuesday, practice on Wednesday. Joe Flacco is going to do media, scheduled to do media on Friday, and then start on Sunday. I mean, that's just a lot. So you need the right guy to be able to handle that. And let's say they go out there on Sunday and stink. You need the right guy that can go handle that and bounce back on Thursday Night Football against the Steelers, because that is a huge game, a much bigger game, quite frankly, than Sunday at Lambeau is. Much, much bigger game for this Cincinnati Bengals team. So this move, the reason why it's the best option, or was the best option for the Bengals, everything I've mentioned. But the last thing is what they gave up. What they gave up. Yeah, they traded a 5th-round pick to the Cleveland Browns, and they got a 6th-round pick back. So they're going to move down, 60 spots in the draft? Maximum? Maybe a little more. Could be less. Could be 30 spots. Could be 40 spots. Could be 25 spots. It might not be a huge gap. It's the Detroit 6th-rounder that they get back, and they get Joe Flacco. They didn't give up a 5th. They didn't give up a 3rd. They didn't give up a 4th. They didn't give up an actual pick. They didn't lose a pick. They just moved down. So you move down in the draft, and you get a shot at jump-starting your season. I'm not going to blame the Bengals for that. Are you kidding me? If they win a couple games, I'm going to want them to do more ahead of that November 4th deadline. And so keeping your pick, giving yourself flexibility, and maintaining the amount of picks you have in the 2026 NFL draft, while also adding a clear upgrade at quarterback, a 6'6" guy that can just sling it all over. Well, that's what you want. You need a passer, a guy who can pass the football, a guy who can throw it wherever he needs to. The Bengals have that now. Will they be able to protect him? Will this offense be efficient? Will it be effective? We'll see. But they had to roll the dice somewhere. Otherwise, the season was completely over. And it's not over. As much as it feels like it's over, they're in 2nd place in the AFC North. They're 2-3. That 2-0 start gave them a buffer to try to figure this out. And even if they fall to 2-4 against the Packers, well, then you're playing the Steelers twice in a month. and they'll be in first place in the North, and you can get right back in this thing, right back in it. So this was a no-brainer move. The only reason I didn't mention Joe Flacco as a candidate in the past is because it's interdivision. The Bengals had never traded with the Browns. Mike Brown probably wasn't jumping up and down with the idea of trading with Cleveland. But for all these other reasons that I've said over the past 10 minutes, that's why it makes sense. The Bengals have a physically gifted passer of the football, a guy who can throw it anywhere he wants to on the football field. They desperately needed that, someone who's been effective and efficient. And yeah, you look at the numbers this year, and it's 2 touchdowns and 6 interceptions, and people are going to shy away from that. Multiple drop balls, multiple mistakes by Cleveland Browns receivers, and the Bengals have elite weapons that they need to maximize if they're going to be a playoff team this year. This trade makes so much sense. Will it work out? Well, we'll see. But got to be honest, I'm excited about it. I hope you are too. Plenty coming your way. We're going to hear from Jamar Chase on Thursday afternoon and Joe Flacco on Friday. Obviously, you can listen to it or watch it right here on Cincinnati Bengals Talk on YouTube or wherever you get your podcasts. For Andrew Fox Miller, I'm James Rapien. Thank you so much for watching and listening to Cincinnati Bengals Talk.